Yeah, because, see, we would think that things which are generally not chametz throughout the year,
Right.
like meat, for example, what's the problem if you buy it before Pesach or after or during Pesach, right? So, or if it's kosher Pesach altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But there are plants that in the processing, especially if it's cut meat. If it's a whole side of meat, that's one thing. But once it's cut meat, so in many supermarkets and butcher stores, they also make breaded meat and stuff like that for already prepared for barbecues and stuff like that. So they're not scrupulous so much to clean between that. I mean, they clean between one and the other, but not Pesach cleaning.
Yeah, makes sense.
And the utensils that are used and so on and so forth. So it's always better. It's always better to get kosher Pesach foods, as we mentioned before, that there are a lot of things that we would think that are okay, like water, for example, because it's only water. But when we look at some of the bottled water, like Costco water, so there and so on and so forth, they actually have other ingredients other than the water.
Right.
And although those are vitamins and so on and so forth, the vitamins can have kitniot in it or even other things in it, and therefore we have to be very careful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You said to check the paper towels and all that on the OU website. They all seem fine.
So those are okay, but sometimes the paper towels use starches, and paper plates they use starches, which could have either chametz-based ingredients or kidneys-based ingredients, and that's what we have to make sure.
Okay. In Crown Heights, the paper towels they weren't like on set for kosher for Passover. So just you're saying check the ingredients.
In Crown Heights right now, most of the stores switched completely to kosher Pesach.
Right.
Completely.
Like in the marketplace, the paper towels, there was nothing in the kosher for Pesach section, and then in the regular section with the cleaning supplies, it was just normal ones.
Right, so some people are much more scrupulous when it comes to this. Some people are less, because as we mentioned before, the general guideline that the sages prescribe is achilas kelev, that if a dog would partake from it. Mm-hmm. So being that a dog will not eat paper, or paper products, or makeup for that matter, then many feel that the laws of chametz and so doesn't apply over here because a dog won't eat from it. However, based on what we learned before, that according to the Arizal, the Kabbalist Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, said that anyone who goes out of their way to distance themselves as far as possible from Chametz and Pesach is promised not to sin. We're not talking about voluntary sins, we're talking about involuntary sins. Because voluntary sins, no matter what you do, you always have a choice. Right. But involuntary sins, which comes usually from negligence, which, as Alter Rebbe explains, come from the overpowering of the animal soul, then that in itself, abstaining from Chametz, which is the ingredient of ego, then when we abstain from that strengthens us and gives us a special protection. Okay, so yesterday we were in Magid, which is the bulk of the Haggadah. The Magid, as we said yesterday, is done immediately after Karpas, after dipping the vegetable inside the salt water. Once we did this, we proceed to pour the second cup of the wine. As we mentioned yesterday, in all 4 cups, it is important to drink all the cup if possible. If not, at least rov kos, at least most of the cup, and to try to do it in one shot, not to sip it. If it's impossible because of dietary issues and so on and so forth to drink it in one shot, or and so on and so forth, then it's okay to sip it, but to do this quickly is possible.
What is the measurement of a cup at least?
So we said it has to be a revi'it, which depends on who you follow, is between 2.9 fluid ounces to fluid ounces. I'm sorry, to 3.2. fluid ounces. So it's usually the standard cup, but if you get bigger than that, you still have to drink most of the cup, if not the entire cup. Okay. The fourth cup, which we drink immediately after benching in Berach, we have to complete the entire cup. The entire cup must be consumed.
So free most of the cup and
all of the cup. But if it's not possible, then most of the cup. But the fourth one must be consumed in its entirety.
So not 1/4. I don't know why yesterday I had to note it down 1/4.
1/4 of what?
1/4 of the cup.
No.
No, most of it.
3/4 of the cup. Either most of the cup is in more than half, but 3/4. So the second cup is poured, and we, at certain points, if you follow the Haggadah, there are certain points in the Magid that we have to expose the matzah. And generally, when we raise the cup, we conceal the matzah. And other times we open the matzah. During the Magid, we begin by inviting. And we're going to actually let a sikha talk about this right after we conclude this part. But in the beginning of Magid, we make a declaration, all those who need to eat. Heilach ma'anya, this is a bread of poverty, the matzah in itself. All those who are hungry, come and eat. There's several questions. We're already here on the Pesach table, conducting the Seder. Who are we inviting? If we wanted to invite, usually you invite beforehand, you make phone calls, in shul you meet someone. Here we're sitting by the Seder and we're saying anybody who's hungry, come and eat. So what does that mean? Also, if they're hungry, why are we inviting them to partake of poor man's bread? Matzah. In other words, why are you giving them, specifically as we said yesterday, the poor man's bread is the broken matzah. So there's a Hasidic aphorism that when we are inviting, when we make that declaration to invite all those who are hungry to come and sit with us, we're actually inviting ourselves to be present to the Seder. Because as we mentioned yesterday, with all the stresses and all the variables and the people walking around and so on and so forth, we know many times that the body might be present, but the mind and the heart are somewhere else. So we are inviting ourselves to be very present in the Seder. We're inviting all of our soul powers to the Seder. We're inviting our entire life to the Seder. We're bringing ourselves, everything that we've experienced, to the Seder in order to redeem it. Because as we mentioned many times, the subconscious mind doesn't understand time. It doesn't keep a chronological order of things. Something that might have occurred, a trauma that might have occurred in utero or after birth, it is still as fresh as the day that it occurred, even 120 years later in the subconscious mind. David HaMelech says in chapter 51 of Tehillim, "V'chatatzi lenegdi tamid," my sin is in front of me always. Which Chassidus explains that time is relative in each world. In our world, we measure time a certain way. In the world above us, time acts very, very differently. In the world above that, it acts very differently. So, for example, 15 years here in the higher world is considered an instant. And so what we are doing is inviting our past and present to the Seder in order for it to be redeemed. Because when the mind doesn't understand, it remains there even though we might have forgotten about it. But even if we forgot about it as part and parcel of our makeup, it's still there in potential. And it could be triggered at any minute. So when we're making this declaration, all those who are hungry, as we were learning in the Sikha, we're inviting ourselves. We're inviting our entire persona, our entire lives to the Seder in order to elevate it upwards. Why over lechem oni? It's very interesting. There was a book, it's called All About My Life, from Greta Weissman. She was a Holocaust survivor. And she was a young girl in one of the camps when one of her friends one day came and gave her a little napkin. And she says, hold this, don't open it here. And what was it? Inside the napkin was a raspberry. And where are you going to find a raspberry in Dachau? Or in Dachau? Where are you going to find a raspberry? In the concentration camp. And what's more, that you're only going to find one of them. So this is a treasure of treasures. Especially if you haven't eaten normally in years. And yet, to express her friendship, the friend gave her this raspberry that she found. The only item that she possessed. She gave her everything that she had. And this, she said, restored my faith. This showed me that we'll triumph. Because it's very prestigious to give big things. But when you give this one thing that you have, but you're giving it because it means something and it's important, you're giving everything. We mentioned this before in a Farbrengen, that in Lubavitch in a Farbrengen, there was a chassid by the name of Rabbi Chal. This Rabbi Chal asked a question. Why does the small things matter to God? If we could serve God with prestige and so on and so forth, with luxury, of course. As we said yesterday, that where there's a place of luxury and affluence, you have to be very affluent. So in God's world, to give God, why is it that our small actions matter? So Rabbi Chal explained and gave a mashal. And there was a king who was an avid hunter. He would go into the field, he would go to the forest and conduct his hunting expeditions. But on one such expedition, the king tarried. He took his time. And before he realized it, it became sunset. And it was too dangerous to drive back to the palace. There were highway robbers, etc., etc. And so he sent one of his ministers to scour around to find if there's a lodging, a house that they could stay by throughout the night until morning. After scouring the forest, the minister found a little broken down shack. The roof wasn't a roof. The walls weren't the walls. It was an impoverished shack. And upon knocking the door, the owner of the shack opens up. It was a lowly pauper. And he was surprised. The pauper was surprised to see the minister of the king standing right in front of him. This was an honor. He says, to what do I owe this honor? He says, in actuality, the king is looking for lodging for the night. He says, I would love to. But you see this place? This is not fit for a king. I have no furniture. I have nothing to eat. It says, the king is looking and you're the only place we found. And if it's okay by you, the king would like to stay here. He says, it's okay by me. The king can have the entire house. The king comes in and the pauper turned to the king and says, King, my little broken shack is your broken shack. King down for dinner. The king turns to the pauper and says, okay, what are we eating? He says, King, all I have is this little broken bread over here, this dark bread over here. But my little dark broken bread is your dark broken bread. So okay, they shared the little broken bread. The king had to go sleep hungry, but now it's time to go to sleep. Where do we sleep? Where's the bed? It says, King, I don't have a bed. I have a few pieces of straws that I put on the floor. He says, but my few pieces of straws are your 3 pieces of straws. He says, and where's the blanket? He says, I don't have a blanket. I have my coat. That's what I use. But my raggedy old smelly coat is yours blanket tonight. That's how the king went to sleep. That's how the king was hosted. That's how he lodged. Upon returning back to the palace the following day, the king ordered his ministers to at once begin building a beautiful palace, a beautiful mansion adjacent to the palace for this pauper. The ministers heard this and says, but king, for what? What did he already do? He says, he hosted me. He says, but king, we also hosted you at times. But we gave you luxury. We gave you a five-star room with amazing bedding and goose down pillows and blankets, 5-course meals. We gave you everything. What did he already give you? The king responded, yes, you gave me beautiful lodgings, but he gave me everything that he had. He literally gave me everything, and the moment that I needed the most. What Hashem expects from us, as our Talmudic sages prescribe, pt.2 shel machad, open for me but a pinhole, and I will proceed to open for you an entire world, an entire hall. Sometimes a small thing means the most. And so when we're inviting ourselves and those around us to be present is to be and become conscious of how the small parts of our lives, how the things that we feel are insignificant. And not only that, the things that we call poor man's bread, like in other words, it's poverty, it's fragmented, it's broken. But this is what matters the most right now. And this is what we're dealing with. And so this is how we begin. We all, as we mentioned during the Sikha last week, the style of the Haggadah, of the Seder, is we begin with the disgrace and we end up with redemption. We begin with humble beginnings and then Baruch Hashem, we expand to greatness. In the Magid, it is where we relay the story of the Yetziat Mitzrayim. As we mentioned yesterday, it is important that everyone's engaged during the Seder. Everyone should be given to read. They could read it in a native tongue. And it's not only, as we mentioned before, important to read the Haggadah, but it's very important to tell our own story and to create discussions based on the Haggadah. What does it mean for us? How do we understand this? What does this back and forth between Paro and Moshe represent for us? As we discussed in the Chassidus, the inner dimension of this. Every item in the Seder is a key to our own redemption. We shouldn't just transverse over it. We should just skip over it. We should read it and we should discuss it. We should ask our kids, even if there's no real answer for it. Even if there's not an answer that we mentioned before, what Eli Wiesel mentioned about one of the students of the yeshiva that had the question, what is life all about? What is this all about? Why are we learning? Why are we davening? And when he turned to his Rosh Yeshiva, the Rosh Yeshiva smacked him in the face. And he told them, you mean to tell me you're willing to trade such a powerful question for an answer? Don't you understand? Questions unite us. Answers divide us. Question could perpetuate our growth for an entire lifetime. Not every question needs an answer. But the marking of a free, liberated human being is the ability to ask in order to grow. So it's okay to even pose questions that we might not even be aware of the answers. But it certainly opens up for other discussions and other introspection and assessments and so on and so forth. During the Magid portion, as we conclude the Magid, we also mentioned, Rabbi Shmuel would say and taught that anyone who did not say these three things during the Leil of Pesach Seder did not fulfill the obligation of the conducting Pesach. What are the three things? And we announce it out loud: Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. And then we say Pesach. Why do we have to say it? Because Shepasach, that Hashem leaped over our forefathers' homes. At that moment, when we say Pesach, we look at the Zroah. We look at the chicken neck or the shank bone that represents a Pesach offering. We mentioned yesterday that the way that we cook, or that we roast the Pesach, the Zroah, because it's symbolic of the Paschal offering. Now there are two customs to this. Some people cook it, some people roast it to mimic the Pesach offering. One thing for sure, we're not allowed to eat roasted meat during the Tzdarim. So not to create any association between the Paschal offering, the sheep that must have been roasted, versus the meat that we're allowed to have. So roasted meat is not allowed to be eaten that night. So if someone roasted the meat and there's still meat on the zroa, on the shank bone or on the chicken neck, we're not allowed to eat it that night. Rather, we should eat it sometimes during the next day. However, our custom, as we mentioned yesterday, is to completely and utterly char the zroa, not to leave any meat edible. So not to confuse that this is actually the Pesach offering. However, when we say Pesach, we look at the shank bone. Now, what is the Passover? What is the Passover offering? Why do we need to roast the meat on Passover as a Korban Pesach? For what purpose? Why couldn't it just be cooked?
Right, boiled or whatever.
Right? So, Chassidus explains that this is an agent to achieve personal liberation. As we mentioned yesterday, a slave is someone who is nothing more than an object to their owner. Their will doesn't matter, their thoughts don't matter, their emotions don't matter. They don't matter. They're nothing more than an object. They're told what to do. They have no control of time, not their own time. That's why, by the way, the first commandment that we received right before we went out of Egypt is to start counting the calendar, starting with Rosh Chodesh Nisan, according to the lunar cycle. Why? Because in creating a calendar, we are deliberately stating that our time matters. That there's experiences that we could have in one day that are not available the next day. And each day, time matters. A slave doesn't have control over their time. If it's their wedding anniversary or a holiday or this, doesn't matter. They don't matter, so their time doesn't matter. The first marking of a truly liberated person is that their time matters. As I have said many times, time is life, and life matters. Every single second matters. Let's go back. A slave is told what to do. When we cook meat, like soup, where does the meat receive its flavor from? As we farbrang the other night in the city, we discuss according to Chassidus, and we know this according to, but Chassidus explains Where does the meat derive its flavor when we cook it? Like in soup, like in stew. From where? From the outside. From the vegetables, from the condiments, and so on and so forth. Where does the meat derive its flavor when we roast it? From the inside. The flavor is extracted, the fire extracts the flavor to come out. In order to come out of Egypt, we needed to extract ourselves. Because until that point, we were told, you are this, you are not this, and you are not this. And we're not just talking about the externals we mentioned before. We're not talking about just the slave drivers. We were told from the outside of our soul, from our body consciousness, from our animal, from the Yetzer Hara's consciousness, was telling us what to do, what not to do. In order to be truly liberated, one's inner self must come out. Because as the Sfat Emes, Rabbi Yehuda Leib of Gur, the Ger Rebbe, asks, why does Judaism explain that we have two Mashiachs? We have Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Even though some explanation means he's one and the same. We need two, the Sfat Emes says, because Mashiach ben Yosef comes to take the Jews out of exile. Mashiach ben David comes to take the exile of the Jew. You could take a Jew out of exile, but the exile still remains inside of the Jew. And the Jew still thinks along the way of exile. Look how we are today. For the most part, our exile, as we recognize it for thousands of years, has stopped a while ago. We are truly liberated to go to shul and keep Shabbat and keep kosher and send our kids to Jewish education. We're able to walk around with kippot and so on and so forth. We're protected in this country. We're certainly not living 50, 60 years ago in communist Russia. Or here in America where Judaism wasn't a thing. We have over 26 shuls in our vicinities. How many kosher establishments do we have around us? What's the availability? If we're lazy and we're too lazy to get into our cars to go to buy kosher food from one of the 3 or 4 establishments that we have here, you could go online on Instacart and just have it delivered to your house, literally. In other words, like manna falling from the heavens. And yet, for some odd reason, we still insist on sending our children to these destructive schools, these dangerous schools. We're still, for some reason, have in our mind that I don't have to go to shul. That it's okay not to buy kosher. That I have too many responsibilities to keep Shabbat. In other words, yes, today we're technically out of exile. Exile as we know it is done. Nobody's chasing us. Nobody's forcing us. Nobody is barring us from being ourselves. But the exile is instilled within ourselves. It's part of our muscle memory, unfortunately. And for this very reason, we have two Mashiachs. We have Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef takes us out of our exile, but Mashiach ben David comes to take the exile out of us. And that's why the Pesach offering must have been roasted. That the Pesach offering was commanded to be slaughtered and to be offered before the last of the 10 plagues, before the Makat Bchorot. Because before Hashem is going to seal the deal with the Egyptians, we have to already be in the mode that we're ready and willing and able and have the desire to be liberated. So when we look and we say Pesach, we're opening up our channels for liberation. We're saying, Hashem, I'm ready. I'm ready for liberation. I'm ready to let go of my triggers. I'm ready to let go of my anxiety. I'm ready to let go of my anger, of my blaming, of my shaming. I'm ready to let go of all the handcuffs and the shackles that I've been put into or I've put myself into. I'm ready. Then we say Pesach, we don't touch the Zerah because we don't want to show that this is the actual Pesach offering. We look at it and the Kera. You could point, but you don't touch it. A lot of time we just look at it. Then when we say matzah, at this point the matzah is covered, we hold the matzah. Matzah zu, this matzah, why do we eat? And it's very interesting. Because we ask matzah zu, why do we eat this matzah? And what do we answer? The traditional answer that we say is because shelo hispik batzek avoteinu, because the dough of our forefathers did not have sufficient time to rise before we had to escape Egypt, and so it was cooked by the desert sun. Well, that's a very interesting answer because in the very same passages that we read in Parshat Bo, that Hashem commanded us to start keeping the months, to start counting the months, and to give the Korban Pesach, we're also instructed to eat matzah during our Seder. So we actually eat matzah the night before we left. We didn't just take dough outside and eat it for the first time outside of Egypt. We were commanded to have a Seder the night before we left, consisted of matzah, maror, and the Pesach offering.
It doesn't say sometimes Torah is the time.
Right. So the order is not, but wait a second. So why don't we just say that because we're commanded? Chassidus, and on Pesach, we're actually going to be learning a discourse regarding this point. There's matzah before midnight and there's matzah after midnight. The matzah before midnight needed to be guarded. The matzah afterwards did not. Because the matzah before midnight was before Ein Sof revealed himself Hashem revealed himself to the Jewish people. And therefore there was room for the klipa, for the other side to start nurture from this great energy that the matzah possesses. So we need to safeguard it. The matzah afterwards is written differently, without a vav. And so forth. And we're going to be discussing this. But nevertheless, when we say matzah, we touch a matzah. The maror, we touch the maror. Now, very interesting. The night before we went out of Egypt, we were commanded to have a Seder. With whom? With our families. Why with our families? We learned this before, we spoke about this before. By the Lubavitcher Rebbe, by the Rebbeim, all the Rebbeim, the tradition is that during the month of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the Hasidim would travel to be with the Rebbe for the entire month. But by Nisan, Hasidim wanted to come to spend time and celebrate Pesach with the Rebbeim, and especially by our Rebbe, that the Rebbe's birthday is this Friday, which was Yud Aleph Nisan, 3 days before Pesach. So those who wanted to travel to be with the Rebbe for his birthday, for bringing and so on and so forth, and especially the times where it was difficult to buy tickets for such a small amount of time, it means that they would stay throughout Pesach as well. And the Rebbe often discouraged people from traveling outside of their vicinity to be with the Rebbe for Pesach. Why? Because the Rebbe always emphasized that Pesach must be spent with the family. Must be. Because the very first Seder that we were commanded to hold was with the family. Because in trying to destroy the Jewish people, the entire purpose of the breaking labor, of the psychological and physical torture that Paro and the Egyptian inflicted upon the Jewish people was just for one reason, to disassemble the family. Because they saw that we're increasing in rapid rates, And they became very concerned, as we mentioned before, of a security breach. That we went from being 70 to 15 million in such a short time, and they started becoming suspicious. What are you planning that you're increasing this quickly? Are you planning to overthrow us? Are you planning to join our enemies from within? So Paro's entire agenda was, how do you stop them from increasing, and how do you destroy them? So you disassemble the family. You sent the fathers to be slaves. Then the home is discombobulated. You throw the children to the Nile, to secularism, and the entire family will just be disassembled. Any time our enemies targeted us, it always begin more or less with the disconnecting the children from the parents. And you even see this today, that the target is the children away from the parents. If you want to destroy a nation, if you want to destroy a tree, you don't go after the top fruits or the top branches. You just cut off the roots and it dies by itself. If you want to destroy a nation, just cut it off from where it came from and it's done. That's it. And you see, because of assimilation, what's happening. That when we don't send our kids to Jewish schools, when we don't conduct Jewish ceremonies and ritual in our homes, the children are, God forbid, are sucked up by the secular culture. And this is a travesty, because then the children feel like they're mushrooms, that they're growing out of nowhere. And this is how they destroy their nation. And that's why the very first Seder that we're commanded to hold the night before we left Egypt was in the company of our families. Because redemption begins when the entire family is together. When we all complement each other, when we all sing together. And yes, we have different personalities. We have the Ben HaChacham, we have the Ben HaRasha, we have the Ben HaTam, and we have the Ben that She'eino Yodel Lishol. And we even have the fifth son somewhere hanging out over there that we need to schlep him back in. But that's the point. The family needs to get together. And that's why it's so important, and we see that Pesach marks itself so differently in such a unique way from all the other holidays, as we mentioned last week, that all the other holidays have their prescribed laws. What we need to eat, what we don't need to eat, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, when should we do it. But Pesach is so unique. That Pesach is the only holiday in the Jewish calendar that, aside from the actual laws, there are also traditions. But every holiday has its tradition. But over here it's different, because here every family has its own traditions. There are families who eat certain foods and certain families who don't eat certain foods. There are families who sing one way and some different. There are families who the father wears all white and families that don't. Pesach is all about, as we said yesterday, the conversion of the past, present, and future. The entire purpose of this Leil HaSeder is Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. This is a biblical mitzvah to relay the story of our Exodus, and in that to impart our family traditions upon our children, so they should see what was done before. So we show them and we experientially apply it with everything. This is how we used to do it. This is how my mom used to make the kugel, and this is how this, and so on and so forth. And let them know that this is our tradition. We don't eat these foods, and so on and so forth. It's very interesting, because when we first started, my wife and I first started, the rabbi who we were affiliated with was Rabbi Zalman Lieberhoff, Reb Rendel's grandson. And according to a very strict Lubavitch minhagim that they had from their families, they virtually eat nothing on Pesach. I mean, nothing is an understatement. And they wouldn't even use oil; they would use schmaltz, chicken fat, because it should be processed, and so on and so forth. And so we gave everything up, coffee and everything, but that was too difficult for us, because we had no minhagim. We didn't really have tradition. Nobody explained it to us. So after speaking to the chief rabbi of Crown Heights, Rabbi Marlo Alav Shalom, I asked him for the following year, Rabbi, this was too much. Is it okay that we discuss what we keep and what? And he says, yes. So we discuss what we're comfortable, what we're not comfortable, but we said this is going to be the setting from now on. And so we allowed only milk, like milk and cottage cheese, because when the Rebbe visited my wife's school, Machon Chana, on the way to his Seder, he would always stop by the dorm of Machon Chana, and he would go through different rooms, the kitchen, and once he opened the refrigerator, and it was empty. It was only Pesach food, but there's no milk, there's no dairies, and the Rebbe says, "Where's the dairies?" And so from this point on, the girls of Machon Chana always had the custom of having dairies. Milk and cottage cheese and so on and so forth. It depends on how much by our house, we're only allowed milk and cottage cheese, and that's it. None of the yogurts and other stuff, certainly not sugar, because we don't have sugar. But we allow milk, cottage cheese, oil from, as you know, from Milan, and
Oil from Milan?
yeah.
Only from Milan.
Yeah, we have other things, certain things that we only allow. Only coarse salt, no spices, nothing else. Everything else, we make our own. As far as fruits and vegetables, we buy directly from Restaurant Depot or from Bingo, one of those price stores, in cases. In a case. We don't go buy from the supermarkets where people touch it. And we don't know who touched it with what. And not only that, we buy in a case, in other words, nobody really touched it, but we only eat things that we could peel. And we only, in order to eat anything, we peel everything. Every vegetable, every fruit we peel.
Right, I was going to ask you about that. So no nuts, right?
Walnuts you're allowed to.
Okay.
Almonds you're allowed to. Legumes you can't have.
Walnuts and almonds.
Yeah, legumes.
Right.
Raisins.
Huh?
Raisins.
Raisins, we won't eat that. It's okay. If it's kosher Pesach, it's kosher Pesach. But,
So almonds and walnuts, you would just check first, like we do the salt?
yeah. Yeah, usually they buy it in their casing, in the shells, and we do the shells ourselves.
For walnuts and almonds?
For walnuts, yeah.
Oh. I never saw that in a shell. Okay.
Yeah, you have to buy it in bulk.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, we peel everything. That's our minhag. And so we allowed coffee, milk, and everything else we make by ourselves. Mayo we make on our own. Ice cream we make on our own from milk and banana. We don't have sugar. A lot of people have sugar, but those in Chabad who have sugar, they boil their sugar. And they just use the water from the boiled sugar. We decide not to have that. That's our family custom. And so it's very interesting. The reason why I'm saying is because this was our family custom. That's how our kids grew up. Mm-hmm. And so it's very interesting that till this day, even when our kids were pushing they're pushing the buttons and pushback, and they were really pushing the limits of their Judaism, I remember that even to this day, my daughter who was in university, and all my kids told me this, that they were around very religious people who took them to here and there, but in Israel, my mother took my son to Israel for Pesach, and my mom doesn't have these strict customs. She has very strict customs, but not our customs. And she allowed the ice cream and this, all kosher Pesach have it strict, but that is the highest kashrut. And my son says, "This is not Pesach. I can't touch this." And this is it when he was in his full rebellion. It's like, I can't eat this stuff. This is not Pesach. And even my daughter, when she went on a trip with her friends for Pesach to one of a vacation spot, she's like, she bought vegetables and fruit, and that's all she ate the entire week. So you see something, and it's very interesting because by us, and we see this by the Manishtana as well. The order of the Manishtana that we sing by us is unlike the traditional Manishtana, which is usually like the first question. Good morning. The first question is Manishtana halayla. Traditionally, what's different from this night? All the other nights, that in this night, all the other nights we eat chametz or matzah tonight, only matzah. And then the next question is about dipping twice. Here, By Chabad, we have a reversed order. We first ask regarding the dipping twice and then the matzah. Why? The Rebbe explains because in relating and transmitting values and traditions, in educating our children, there's a distinct way to do this. Matzah is a biblical food, and we have to eat it because the Torah prescribes it. Children are aware of mitzvot, but you know what children are affected by? What they watch their parents do.
Yeah.
So the first thing the children see throughout the night is we're dipping twice. Why? Why are we doing this? So the Rebbe is explaining that the whole entire point of the night is to transmit, to get the kids to ask, why are you doing this? What's the point? What's your tradition in this? But again, to reinforce to the parents how important to understand that we need to role model. Not just instruct, we need to be the role model of it. Like Shimshon Shtak once came to the Rebbe and says, Rebbe, I want a bracha for my child, that he should be a God-fearing person, a Yira Shamayim, a God-fearing, a chassid, a God-fearing person, and a lamdan, and a scholar. And the Rebbe told him, you be it first. And that will already trickle downwards. So in this, we transmit the Seder, we're also transmitting our traditions. So think back, it might be well worth as a preparation for the Seder to call your parents, your grandparents, what traditions do you remember that maybe got lost over time, but these were a tradition, to reinstate them. Because traditions it's the life of Judaism. It's the vibrancy of Judaism. And some people say, it's only a tradition, it's only a minhag. It's not a law, it's not absolute. And not only that's not true, because as we mentioned before, our sages and the Torah tells us that a tradition that was a widespread tradition that was accepted by a majority of the Jewish population that has a holy origin, has a stricter designation than even a law in the Torah. And not only that, as we mentioned before, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, explains that the word minhag, tradition, spelled backwards, is Gehenom. That when somebody says, it's only a tradition, I don't have to do it, not only they're not accomplishing, they, God forbid, bringing darkness, etc., upon themselves. We have to transmit this tradition to the next generation. In the Seder is the way we do it. In the style that we sing the certain songs, and the type of foods that we don't allow during our table, the stories that we tell about where we come from and what do we remember, and so on and so forth. It's so important, because that's the night, and this is the theme and the purpose of the entire night, Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, to tell the story of the Exodus. And so over here is so important to elaborate. Don't rush over this point. Prepare. Come to the table prepared of points that you want to reminisce about with your parents, with your grandparents, so make sure the children hear it. Make sure that you ask and you tell the children, this is what I remember as a child, this is what I remember, and so on and so forth. Make sure your grandparents are there, whoever's there to tell. This is so important, because as we said before last week, the word lesaper, to tell, is etymologically related to the word sapir, the sapphire stone. The more we tell, the more we illuminate. That's the point of the night, to illuminate. As we learned last week in the Magid portion of the Haggadah, we're told about our great sages, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tafur, they're all sitting together in Bnei Brak in Israel, celebrating the Seder throughout that night, and they kept on relating and telling the story deeper and so on and so forth, until morning, the sun rose up, and the students came and proclaimed, Rabbis, it came time to say the Shema in the morning. And the Rebbe asks, if the students realized this, why didn't the rabbis realize this? Mm-hmm. So the Rebbe explains that the inner dimension of this passage in the Haggadah is that night represents the post-Holocaust of the destruction of the Second Temple. That we cannot imagine the magnitude of destruction, of having open godliness, miracles, seeing godliness openly stream into this world day to day, minute to minute. And after 1,000 years since we came out of Egypt, and save for the interruption of 70 years between the destruction of the first temple and the second, we had services, we had Kohanim, we had Levi'im, we had miracles, and now we can't imagine the magnitude of the Holocaust that occurred after the destruction of the temple. The Kohanim and their wives were sent to Rome. Rabbis were sent to Rome to fight as gladiators. Their wives and their daughters were sent to Rome to be prostitutes. Many were murdered and barbarically tortured. Rabbi Akiva was murdered in a heinous way. Rabbi Ishmael was murdered in such a heinous way publicly. The 10 martyrs, we can't imagine. And so now Rabbi Akiva was sitting and celebrating the Seder in Bnei Brak that night, and they were telling the story until the sun rose. What is it intimating? What is it alluding to? That the more they told, the more they illuminated that darkness, to the extent that their students mistook the light that they produced, the revelation that they produced, because the students weren't speaking about a physical light. The students became very sensitive to the spiritual revelations of their rabbis, and the rabbis revealed so much. They said, it's time to say Shema. The oneness of Mashiach is here. The Haggadah is telling us that in telling our stories, in sharing our experiences of going out of our own difficulties, of our immigrations, of times that we fell and we had to get it back up and muster enough courage to move forward, based on our faith in Hashem, based on our trust in Hashem. We bring light, we clarify, we illuminate. That's what we're doing in the Seder. That's the power we have. So we shouldn't skimp over the stories. We shouldn't skimp. Just the opposite. Parents are encouraged to bring notes to the Seder table, or at least some talking points. There's a great game that we play over here during the Seder time, because there's a mitzvah to tell and ask questions that night. We have a game called How Do You Do from JLI. Card games that ask you questions about comical questions, traditional questions, and so on and so forth. And it's a great talking engagement, questions and answers. What's your favorite Pesach memory? What's your favorite? All these things. And how do you think that we came along in this Pesach? It's amazing. Don't skimp. Prepare things to deliver during this Pesach table. Aside from the Seder, it's a shame that people read this like a Chassid going, wow, this is long, okay. When do we eat already? If that's the case, you could just go have a meal at any time. Why do we need this for? That's exactly what I meant yesterday when I said that you're walking into a diamond mine, not realizing you're walking into a diamond mine. For you, it's just another cave. Okay, yeah, go in and go out. It's very nice, but okay, it's another cave. Not realizing how much wealth is contained right behind the walls. Just dig a little bit. And here Hashem's giving us all the tools to dig. And in digging will be instantly released. Okay. We have the 4 sons during the Seder. As we spoke about the Ben HaChacham, the wise son. What's the wise son's question? What are these testimonial and testimonial, irrational and civil laws that our God commanded you? And as we discussed last week, this addresses a part of our consciousness, because we, as we mentioned before, we all possess all four sons and even the fifth son. What's the wise son within ourselves? The part of ourselves that wants to transcend and experience spirituality in a spiritual manner. In other words, to abandon all the world and all the limitations. And what do we tell the son? Judaism and freedom, liberation is not there to quench a thirst of yours. Religiosity, as we mentioned yesterday in the meditation class, is not there for your escaping purpose because you don't like the world you're living in, because you feel that the world is too limited. That's why you need spirituality in your life. As we know, many people connect to religion because they had trauma as a child. Because they were traumatized as a child, then they connect to religiosity. But all of religiosity is nothing more than a sense of control for them. And they're using God. This is what the third commandment in the 10 commandments, don't use my name in vain. God is saying, don't use religion for your needs. Don't use me to prove points in your life. Don't use me to antagonize other people because you're saying you're a shomer and they're not. So here, look at me. No, God says, don't use me like that. That's not what I'm here for. That's not what Torah is here for. But therefore, all of Judaism and all of religion is not an escape from your corporal form, but rather in response to God's desire of drawing God into the corporality. And that's what we tell the Ben Chacham. The Ben Chacham who says, how do I leave this world? As we learned last week. We tell him, but Judaism is not there to quench your thirst. It's not there to satisfy a hunger, a need. Judaism is your response to God based on God's needs, based on God's desires. Somebody texted me today, and actually we're going to be speaking about this in the parenting class right before we started today. There was a mother, she said, I just finished listening to last week's parenting class, and you spoke about the importance of the spouses telling each other that I love you to each other openly and to tell to the children. And she says, but I didn't grow up with a father who told me this as a parent, so I don't know how to do this. And my daughter actually knows this, and I feel so bad that she knows not to come for me for a hug because I won't give it. She said last week, my mother was at home, and she asked my daughter to go give mommy a goodnight hug and a kiss, and she said, and the daughter said to her mommy, mommy doesn't hug goodnight. She doesn't give a kiss to goodnight. Doesn't work. She doesn't do it. So she said, what do? I'm not in the mood to give a hug. I'm not in the mood that's not me. I said, whoa. Parenting is about what the child needs, not what you need. And so even though you're not ready to give it, but this is what your spouse needs, this is what your child needs, that's what you signed up for. And so the same thing when it comes to this. Judaism is not there out of your own need, what you need, what God needs. Oh, I'm not there? Okay, so work towards it. Give it. But that's the entire thing that we tell the Ben Chacham is not there to quench a need. Judaism is God coming down on Mount Sinai and giving us the Torah. And he says, this is how you're going to connect to me. This is not human beings inventing a system to see how do we climb out of this world. The humanity tried that with the Tower of Babel.
No, what about if we ask God for something? But I need this.
I need it for what? In order to be able to serve you. And I need health in order to serve you, because I can serve you better when I have health. I need parnasah because it's so much easier to serve you with parnasah. You want tzedakah, you want kosher food and Jewish education, of course, help. I need time off. Hashem, help me get a vacation. But this is in order to regenerate, so I could be able to serve you with more vigor. And so on and so forth. Everything that we have is in order to serve Hashem. And that's so important to realize. Then we have the Ben Rasha, the one who rebels against everything. It's very interesting. This boy has been through trauma in his life. And he has teeth, he's growling. As we mentioned last week, Af haket shenav, we say to him, smack, blunt his teeth. But what do we say, blunt his teeth? That Rasha, if you take the word shinav, his teeth, the numerological equivalent of the word shinav, teeth, which is equal to 366, you minus that from the word Rasha, which is numerologically equivalent to 570, you're left with the word 204, which is tzaddik, righteous. The Haggadah says, smack his teeth. So a boy is rebelling because he went through trauma. In the middle of a Seder, you punch his teeth out. But Chaz v'Shalom says his teeth is growling. But his teeth is not him. His trauma is not him. Don't look at him for his trauma. Look at him for who he's inside, behind the teeth. Behind the trauma, there lays a tzaddik. There's a perfectly righteous person, but he is covered by the teeth, by his anger. So either you're going to be reacting to the teeth or you're going to be responding to the inner person. Again, Yetziat Mitzrayim is to go out of the surface level, to reveal what's inside, as we said before. And so, being the Ben Rasha, we're not just talking about an individual who's sitting by the table, but as we mentioned many times already, each one of us possesses all four. And in this moment, we have to reflect within ourselves, what is the Rasha says, what is the service for you? In other words, he's not even interested in doing anything. Why? Because he's so taken aback with his trauma, his anger, his childhood issues, that, like the woman says, I can't, my husband needs me to say I love you, my children, I can't, that's not the way I grew up. I don't know how to be affectionate. Now, is that her? Because inside of her she wants. But what's the trauma? So over here, each one of us has this Ben Rasha, this part within ourselves, which contends with why this happened, and because of this I'm not ready. I can't. I won't be able to. But that's not you. That's your teeth. That's the outside. Inside you have you have the Pintel Yid, that tzaddik within yourself. A part that never Chaz v'Shalom drowned. A part that never Chaz v'Shalom fell down into the ditch, into the abyss. Make a distinction at this point between you and your trauma. I'm not the brokenness. I'm not the fragmentation. I am the one that's here to repair it, as we spoke about yesterday. And that's how we look at it also Ben Rasha, the one who's contending everything. Inside here is good. You got to blunt the teeth. In other words, remove the part that is congruent, that's getting in the way. And how, that's all the whole discussion by itself, and we're going to be speaking about it in the parenting class tonight. Then you have the Tam, the simple one. Some explain that he is the highest of all four. He's a Soldat. No questions. I'm here to do. Kabbalah soul. Complete Kabbalah soul. He's not asking how do I escape, how do I escape. Whatever needs to be done, not a question. Bittul b'mitzi, completely bittul. He's bittul. It's like, I have no questions. Not that I don't have questions. He's simple. He is different than the one who doesn't know how to ask. He's not that he doesn't want to know how to ask. He has no questions because he accepts everything based on what Hashem says.
He has both types of bittul?
No. Only Ben Chacham has the highest bittul. He has bittul yesh. He has selflessness. He's there ready to perform. The Ben Chacham, as you said, wants to completely become null and void and leap out of existence altogether. Like the flame which wants to abandon the wick. The Tam, the simple one, is there, he's very willing to do it. He's not looking to escape anywhere. He's willing to, but he's simple. This is a part of us who's willing and compliant. I'm doing everything. Not because as robotic, mechanical, but rather because this is what I'm here to do. This is my purpose in life. But then again, we have to ask ourselves, in marriage, in life, in our Judaism, in parenting, are we simple because we're ready, willing, and able, and I've come also to respond to our missions and realizing this is my entire purpose of being here? Or are we simple because we simply don't have the courage to change anything? And we're just doing this mechanically and out of rote, like a marriage out of rote, child rearing out of rote, Judaism out of rote, just practical. It's just habitual, which in itself could, God forbid, lead to the next one, which is the one who doesn't have questions. Now he has no question. He doesn't want to be bothered with questions. It's like, okay, what time is it? You said 1 hour I'm going to be here? 1 hour, okay, let's get to it. I have no questions. Come on, let's eat. I want to get out of here as soon as possible. In other words, he has no questions because he wants to get out of here.
Right.
And that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. Because, in couple psychology it says so long as a couple are arguing, it's still a good sign. The worst thing is that they stop talking. No more arguing, it's quiet. That's, God forbid, a sign that they're checking out. So the fourth son who doesn't ask, this is dangerous. That's why you have to initiate him. This is why you need to initiate him, get him to talk. Ask him trigger questions, leading questions that he'll be able to respond to. Things on his level. Bring him out. But then we said there's a fifth son. The one who never shows up. He doesn't even know it's Pesach anymore. He's out somewhere in the clubs, doing something, a business meeting, he has important things to do. He doesn't even know, tonight's Pesach, how do you know that? This is a Jew, according to at least one talk, the Rebbe says that this is a Jew who left the Seder because the way he didn't like the other four doing the Seder. He was discouraged by the other four. So it's up to the other four to go and find them and bring him back. And for this, it's incumbent upon us before Pesach to reach out to anyone who might have fell by the wayside and bring it to the table. Even though we might have disagreements and so on and so forth, bring it to the table. Have him sit down a little bit. Have matzah. Have Pesach. Have maror. Now, very interesting. After this, when we finish the matzah, when we finish the magid, we drink the second cup. As we said before, the second cup is corresponding to the Beit Rasha. So once we finish the second cup of the magid portion, there's a bracha that we're a whole entire bracha that we are asking Hashem to be able to celebrate again with the korbanot and the Beit HaMikdash and so on and so forth. Then we say an entire bracha, and then we drink the second cup and lean to the left. At this point, we get up and we go to make Netilat Yadayim for Motzi. For Netilat Yadayim for Motzi. We do this every year, traditionally every single week, through 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, when on Netilat Yadayim, and then we sit down, we grab the 3 matzot, and the 3 matzot in 3 fingers, like this, and we make 2 brachot. But the first one, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. Then we let go of the bottom matzah, holding only the broken matzah and the top matzah, and say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. We are fulfilling the mitzvah of eating the matzah. And at this point, each person must eat 3/4 of a matzah. a standard shmur matzah, you have to have 3/4 of a matzah. If it's thinner matzah, some people like thinner matzah, then it has to be more than 3/4. It has to be a 1.1 ounces of matzah. And we have to eat it minimally in 3 minutes, but we have all the way until 9 minutes to finish the matzah. The one discrepancy over here, which is very important to remember, is that we're not allowed to speak until we finish the entire 3/4 of the matzah. Because we say the bracha, motzi, and achilat matzah, and just like when we make hamotzi throughout the year, we are not allowed to speak until we finished the food, the piece of bread that we eat. We have to swallow it. Until we don't swallow, we're not allowed to speak, because technically you're still involved in the mitzvah, the bracha to the mitzvah. So too over here, until we didn't finish consuming the 3/4 of matzah between 3 to 9 minutes, we're not allowed to speak.
So unlike hamotzi, traditionally where the lead will hand out, everyone has their own set of 3.
Right. So over here, the one who has the one who is making a motzi will distribute a piece of the motzi to everyone, and then you supplement that with other matzot from the matzah box.
Oh, okay.
The same will apply with the afikoman. As the afikoman was broken from the bigger half of the matzahs that was broken, and so that has to be distributed as afikoman by the other night. But we know that you have to have between a half and 3/4 of a matzah as well for the afikoman. So every person gets a piece of the matzah, and then add to it another whatever amount you need in order to fulfill it.
So you need to eat 3/4 of what do you get?
No, 3/4 of a whole matzah. Of a whole matzah. So a whole matzah. Huh?
So it's distributed supplementally.
A small piece is given from the motzi, and a small piece is given to afikoman at the end of the meal. And aside from the piece you get, you have to supplement in order to make up 3/4 of one whole matzah. Okay. The weight of 1.1 ounces. Some people think that you just take a small piece and that's it, and you continue. No, because if you do that, you're not fulfilling the mitzvah. And not only that, we spoke about yesterday that according to the Zohar, the matzah of the first night is the bread of faith that endows and inserts the faith within the Jew, which leads us to the second matzah, which is the next night is the food of healing, which heals the person from any physical ailment. But in order to do this, you need the portion that our sages prescribed. Mm-hmm. So here's where a lot of people mistake, and this is where they fall by the wayside, unfortunately, that they think, okay, now we made a motzi, just like the rest of the year. You make a motzi, okay, the meal began, let's start serving and sit and schmooze. No. Over here, you made a motzi, you have to eat a kazait, a olive weight of 1.1 ounces of matzah in a certain duration, and then our minhag this is a Chabad minhag, we eat it away from the table, we eat it in bags, in plastic bags, because we are very particular not to dip our matzah in anything, and to make sure that the matzah doesn't interact with any liquid that's not fruit juice. And fruit juice we also don't, but fruit, like 100% fruit juice is not considered to be liquid. But nevertheless, over here we're still very careful not to dip even to fruit juices during the year, during Pesach, at least the first 7 days, because of Shura. We have this hidur mitzvah, this strictness, beautifying the mitzvah, that because it's plausible that the matzah wasn't kneaded 100% correctly, and an air pocket formed. And I've seen this air pocket form where a little of the flour remained, and even though there's an opinion after it's cooked, the flour is cooked, it won't rise again. But nevertheless, if it's plausible that there is an air pocket, it's plausible that in this air pocket there might be flour, and it's plausible that this flour can interact with water, and because of that it might create chametz, Because of this, we don't dip our matzah into anything. We don't make sandwiches with it. We eat it away from the table where there's nothing on the table. As those of us who are going to be at the Seder knows that when we eat the matzah, we away, and immediately after the matzah, we take the table covering and throw it away immediately. And also, that's why we don't speak when we're eating matzah, because when you're speaking, the saliva in it could be spit out, and therefore it's all provisions. This is not strict halacha, but this is our strictnesses.
Outside of the Seder, are we obligated to eat matzah every day?
According to the technical no, Chassidus explains based on a verse, 7 days you should feed matzot. Ye'achel matzot. That each day you have to bring bittul to the day, and the Rebbe in a footnote on his last discourse explains that yes, you should eat a kazayit matzah every day if possible. Kazayit, an olive, like a 1.1 ounces of a matzah. Okay, so we're not here at this point. It's not a meal. We have the kazait, and immediately after this, we eat the maror. Mm-hmm. The maror is technically horseradish, and we use also romaine lettuce. And the reason for romaine specifically because romaine, and we use romaine and other for the charosa and so on and so forth. The reason why is because the romaine lettuce in the stalk, it grows. The first part of the stalk is the white part is technically sweet, or at least neutral. But as it grows, it becomes more and more bitter. So too, our exile in Egypt began very, very sweet. With Yosef and his brothers, we were treated like kings and royalty. But the longer we stayed there, the more bitter it became. So our minhag is to take the maror and put it inside 1.1 ounces of maror. And so you could divide up between the horseradish and the romaine lettuce, but it must weigh at least 1.1 ounces. We say the bracha Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Haolam Asher Kiddushanu B'Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu Al Achilat Maror, because eating maror is a mitzvah in that night. So we make a bracha and we eat it, and the tradition is you chew on it until it becomes sweet. Now, what's the thought behind this? And it's very interesting. Also, there's another question. We're commanded to eat maror the night that we went out of Egypt. Well, the reason why the night before we went out of Egypt, the reason why we eat maror is to remember the bitterness that we went through. Well, here, the night that we went out of Egypt, we were supposed to eat maror. What? To remember the bitterness? Imagine being in Auschwitz the night before you leave Auschwitz, after the entire grueling Holocaust. You said, eat this so you can remember the Holocaust. I don't need to eat anything. I'll never forget this. So Chassidus explains that night Hashem told us and gave us a key to Exodus. If you don't quantify your trauma, if you don't chew on it, if you don't confront it and quantify it, it's going to just last with you forever. You need to confront it. You need to chew on it. You need to deal with it. Not to rehash it, but to confront it. That's what it means, chew it until it becomes sweet. What does that mean, until it's sweet? On one hand, to chew over your trauma and understand that if God gave it to you, it was always meant for your strength. It was always meant to be sweetened at some point of your life. Very interesting, because when we used to do the public Zdarim in Cleveland, each participant got one part that they needed to develop. One step. Either like from Kaddish to Nirza, each one was given a technical explanation and then this mystical explanation, and they needed to develop something, a story, a poem, and something to bring it out. 2007, there was a man by the name of Ben Lieblich. We're still in touch. Ben Lieblich was one of my students in 2007, 40 years old, Harvard graduate, Harvard Law, and Georgetown Business. His mother works at Capitol Hill, lawyer in Capitol Hill, very prestigious. His entire life was, Baruch Hashem, one big success story. Nice, good-looking American boy, 40 years old. He, by divine providence, received Maror. Now, very interesting. That year, 2007, was a year, as you remember, economy collapsed. As he fractured his leg in the summertime, and he just started a new business, and he fractured his leg, and he couldn't go to the office. He was in a wheelchair for 2.5 months. He lost his business that he had since he made it, medical reporting and so on and so forth. His step was Maror, and he chose to tell a story. The story basically was his life in 2007. The 2007 began with the economy crash. He's losing his business. And for the first time in 40 years, he was without a plan. He wasn't anticipating this because his entire life, Baruch Hashem, everything was set up for him. His parents and then business and school and everything. For the first time, he finds himself so bewildered. And then on top of that, he fractures like he can't leave anywhere. He's stuck in his own house. He said, wow, what a beginning of a year. I was literally broken. But then he says, that forced me to dig deep and create a new business that I never thought about. And then during our Purim party, we have pictures of it, of him, and he met his wife, a girl that came from Russia. And they got engaged. And it says, wow, this year began so broken, but it led me to finding myself. Because up to this point, everything was done for me. I had to discover me. And not only that, once I started discovering me, Hashem sent me my wife. She came just from Russia to Finland, and she came to our Purim party because the community, the young Jewish professionals were predominantly Russian. So she came to join, and he says, you see, this is the essence of Maror for me. It's bitter, but as we learned in class, he said, you chew on it until it becomes sweet. Quantify, qualify. What does that mean? Very simple. Like the woman who says, but I'm not comfortable hugging. I'm not comfortable telling I love you. Confronted. What do you mean confronted? Go and say I love you. This is confronting. This is actually doing something about it. Not rehashing, oh, my father, my mother. That's rehashing. There's no point for that. Point is, okay, confront it, do something practical, make it sweet, give it a reason for why you have to start this bitter. Because if you have to become so sweet after this bitterness, your sweetness is so much more intense. The light, the essential light that stems from darkness. Also, in doing this, with this mindset, as we learned before, to sweeten the judgment before it comes. Sometimes a person does have to go through a gvura period of their life. But as Hasidics explains, we're able to sweeten it before it comes. That way it won't overwhelm us. Because our entire purpose of gvura is just to overcome it. It's meant to strengthen us, to give us, fortify us. We have to go through hard times in order to make us strong. But there's two ways it can come, either in a way like this, and it's very difficult, overwhelming, and eventually you'll get back, or we could sweeten it before it comes down. And how we do it? Happiness. As soon as it comes, says, oh, Baruch Hashem, thank God for this, and this is amazing, smile and laugh. This is why when we chew the maror, we're chewing it until it becomes sweet. The whole point is to sweeten the gvurot, the judgments. Okay, after we finish, so we take the maror, we dip it, we put it into horseradish, we put the horseradish into the romaine lettuce, and we dip it a little bit into the mixture, how do you say it in English? The charoset. Oh, I mixed up before. I said chazeret before for the leaf. I'm sorry. For the charoset. What is it? So it is the mixture of apple, nuts, and wine, in order to symbolize the paste that we had to make our own bricks with. By the way, the Rebbe would not mix the wine into the charoset until that step. He would take wine from his own cup and put it into the charoset and mix it with his pinky. I don't know why, but that's how he did it. And so we dip it into the charoset and we eat it. The next step is a korach sandwich. We take a half a matzah. We take romaine lettuce. Make sure that they're dry. We take the maror, we put it into the leaf, we make a sandwich, and then we make a declaration. This is what Hillel did in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. He would take Pesach, maror, and matzah and put it together.
I thought we put it charoset, no? On the lettuce, the matzah, lettuce, and
We dip the charoset a little bit. I mean, by us we sort of we do, because again, by us we don't want any, so we just do it a drop, but we try to make it as dry as possible. Yes, we do that, but the entire over here, this is because we're commanded in the time of the Beit HaMikdash to eat the matzah, the maror, and the Pesach offering together as a sandwich. What is this sandwich? It is chesed and gvura, to make tiferet. It's taking the matzah, which is transcendence, and the maror, which is bitterness. I'm sorry, it's humility, the Pesach offering, transcendence, and the maror, the bitterness, tiferet. And over here, you need to have at least a half of matzah and one kazait, 1.9 ounces of the bitter herbs as well. At this point, we eat this leaning to the left. I'm sorry, the korach sandwich, we eat leaning to the left, just like we did with a motzi matzah. We lean to the left. At this point, we take the egg, which is upon the ke'ara, and we dip it in salt water. We don't make any blessing, we just eat it. And this egg corresponds to the chagiga offering, the celebration offering. In the time of the Beit HaMikdash, as we know that the three festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, were the three pilgrimage of the year, where the Jewish people had to come to the Beit HaMikdash. And when a Jew would come to the Beit HaMikdash, they would in order to celebrate these Yomim Tovim, we would give a special offering called the Chagiga offering, the celebration offering. Being that we don't have a Beit HaMikdash today, and we're not allowed to give offerings, instead we eat a symbolic egg. Why is egg? Because egg we know we also eat in mourning. And Tisha B'Av, and God forbid, a mourner, God forbid, in the mourning practices, to eat a whole egg, because why? It's represent on the surface level. There's deeper level why specific an egg, but on the surface level, because egg is round and it represents the cycle of life. So we're eating this egg dipped into salt water to remember that we don't have a Beit HaMikdash, and as liberated we are today, is not even half of the story, it's not even a quarter. Until we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, we can't serve Hashem. We only have 20% of the mitzvot, 20% of ways to connect to Hashem. Each mitzvah is a way to connect to Hashem. We're missing the majority, 80% of mitzvot we're missing. We don't have. We can't. God took away because we don't have Eretz Yisrael. We don't have a Beit HaMikdash. And at this point, We have the Shulchan Aruch, the meal. Why is the meal part of the Seder? Why is it a step? Because the entire purpose of our descent into this world is to elevate the world upwards, including the food. So when we're eating, we have in mind not only to elevate ourselves, that we have to liberate all the godly sparks in this world. And so with each food that we eat, have in mind that Baruch Hashem, we should always think this way, but specifically on the Seder night, there's a godly spark in this food, and Be'ezrat Hashem, I'll be able to elevate it upwards by thinking, speaking, and behaving in a holy way, in an elevated way. So I'll elevate the energy in the food over here. And there's godly sparks. At the end of the meal, we eat. We eat. We distribute the afikoman. And don't forget to do this. By the first night, we have to finish it by midnight. I think it's about 12:54. I'm going to post the exact hours. It's not 12 o'clock. It's not 60-minute hours. It's Jewish hours. We have to finish the afikoman portion of the Seder by midnight, the first night. Second night, we have all night. And so you could go with the Seder afterwards as long as you want, but just the afikoman part. But don't forget it. If for some reason a person benched before they had their afikoman, they need to wash again and have their afikoman again, because the afikoman corresponds to the Pesach offering, and we need to have this. It's a mitzvah of the night, and we eat the afikoman leaning to the left again. Whoever stored it away, it could be several people. Each one gives a piece of the matzah that was stored when we broke in Yachat, when we broke the middle matzah. We give a small piece to every person, and you need to supplement it with another whatever amount in order to make up for 3/4 of a matzah, of a whole matzah. Afterwards, we bench. We fill in the next cup, and then we pour a cup of Eliyahu Hanavi, because Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come to publicize the Mashiach is coming. He is a prophet that was assigned to tell all the Jewish people the Mashiach is coming. Our tradition is to take the candelabra. Be very careful, because especially if you're using oil, that you try not to extinguish it. But our custom is to take the candelabra and bring it to the door, because we open the door that night. We keep the door unlocked. The first night we keep all the doors unlocked to show that we're protected. Leil Shimurim, Hashem is protecting us. We're completely safe that night. And we come to the door to greet Eliyahu Navi. We open the door for Eliyahu Navi.
Why was the candlelight?
That's a whole entire discussion by itself. But we spoke about the Farang the other night. What does it mean to open up the door to Eliyahu Navi? Eliyahu Navi needs the door open for him. He can't just jump through the window. He can't come through the chimney. What's the problem? He can't walk through a wall. But very interesting. We open up the door of Eliyahu Navi because we're opening up the door of our door to Eliyahu, our door to redemption. In that moment, tradition says, the Rebbe Rashab instructed his son, when you open the door, you could ask for anything from Hashem that you need in order to serve him. Anything that you need. But the Rebbe Rashab instructed his son, ask for wisdom. As Shlomo HaMelech, when Hashem asked him, what do you want? I'll bless you with anything. Shlomo HaMelech asked for chokhmah, for wisdom, and Hashem blessed him with everything, with wealth and power and influence, etc., and immense divine wealth. Because wisdom includes everything with it. So over here, when you come, the Rebbe Rashab instructed his son, ask for wisdom. Wisdom to serve Hashem. What does it mean, wisdom to serve? To be yourself, to be the best husband, the best wife, the best child, the best parent, the best this. Ask Hashem, give me the wisdom to serve you correctly, in an elaborate and a luxurious way. Give me the resources, bless me with the resources that I should be able to serve you with a luxurious way. But also is to remind ourselves of who we are. Once a student of the Baal Shem Tov came to the Baal Shem Tov. It used to be there was a spiritual endeavor amongst the most astute scholars to look that Eliyahu Navi should reveal himself to them as a divine revelation. And one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov came to him and says, Rabbi, please, I daven and I learned 40 days and 40 nights, and Eliyahu Navi didn't come to me. So the Rebbe says to him, here's what you need to do. Go to the marketplace and and buy as many food provisions as possible. Buy clothing for children, pack up a whole entire suitcase of food and suitcase of clothing, and go to such and such, to a town in Minsk, and go to the end over there, and you'll find a house. Knock over there on this door, and Eliyahu will reveal himself to you. He says, wow, this is very interesting. Okay. He does exactly the Baal Shem Tov, and uses all of his money to buy food. And what is this for? What's going to happen once we do this? He comes to this house, and before he comes in, he hears children crying. He says, Mommy, it's almost Pesach. It's almost Pesach. We have nothing to eat. We don't have clothing for Pesach. What are we going to do? Because it's a mitzvah, it's a tradition. We said yesterday to buy new clothing for the children, for the wife. And I said, Mommy, you don't have any clothing. We're only in ripped, tattered, dirty clothing. And we have nothing to eat for Pesach. We're commanded to have a meal. And the mommy, with face, she said, Hashem will help, kids, don't cry. And this is, as he is coming to the door, he hears this, and he knocks on the door, and here he is with two suitcases of clothes and food. And he's like, what are you doing here? He says, I was sent here. So he says, could I stay here? It was too late to go back home. Could I have the Pesach Seder? He says, of course you can have the Pesach Seder with us. And it was a beautiful Seder. After Yom Tov, he comes back to the Baal Shem Tov. The entire Seder, who's looking, the entire Pesach, who's looking, where is Eliyahu? Where is Eliyahu? He doesn't see him. Comes back to the Baal Shem Tov and says, Rebbe, I did exactly as you said. I didn't see Eliyahu. He says, you did? Okay, here's what you do. Go back to the same house, buy more provision, and this time I promise you'll see Eliyahu Navi. Mm-hmm. And so a little bewildered, okay, but the Rebbe says. He goes back, Shvi Shel Pesach, the 7th day of Pesach of Yom Tov. He comes to the door again, he hears the kid's mommy, what's going to happen? We don't have any food, it's Yom Tov, we have to eat. And she says, children, last time I told you have faith. Hashem said Eliyahu Navi to our door. I have faith. He's going to come again. And as he hears this, he's knocking on the door. And he understood what the Baal Shem Tov was telling him. You are Eliyahu Navi. You have the power of redemption. You have the power to bring redemption to people.
That's a beautiful story.
This is the whole point, that we're opening up the door for ourselves. How much capacity we have to improve the world. We can't imagine how much we can help people. How much important it is. If Hashem is giving us resources, we think, like it says many times, we know the halacha is that if you're in a desert and you're walking and you only have 1 cup of water and you're walking with your friend and there's only enough for one person to survive on. One opinion says you both drink it until there's nothing left, but eventually both will die. The halacha is chayecha koidmin. Your life takes precedence. You don't share because your life takes precedence. And it also goes with money. If you only have enough money for your own family to provide their foods and their needs, before you have to give to your family first. But the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, when it says your life means literally your life. Your life is not buying steak for yourself or luxury. Your life means you have to have the bare necessities, but the rest help people. That's what God gave it for you for. This is the entire purpose. And the person says, oh, but wait, it says 10 to 20, not more than 20. What if I already give? The Alter Rebbe says, and what if, God forbid, your own life? If a doctor says, in order to save your life, it's going to cost all this money, are you going to also be skimpy with that? No, in order to save your life. So the Alter Rebbe says, and you can't imagine, in giving this, you're saving your life. Literally, you're saving your own life. You think you're doing a favor for someone else. You're doing a favor for you and your family and your children and children's children. So over here, when we think, oh, well, I don't have this time and I don't have this money, You don't have time for what? Because what? Because you're busy more left and right doing meetings and Torah and davening and this, and you really don't have time because you're trying to balance and there's barely time for yourself? Or there's got 5 minutes here that I could sit on the phone and play around and just like relax a little bit, veg out a little bit. That means it's not pertinent immediate to your life. Yes, you need relaxing time. But when the world is burning around you and there are people who need you around you, what do you mean like your time? You're here for a reason. Don't forget how much power we wield to redeem the world. How many resources Hashem gives us in our lifetime to redeem the world, to redeem ourselves in the world. Okay, so now we come back, we sit down. We by the way, in the Chabad, there's an interesting custom that our children started, even as young kids, not our children, we watched the back then, today they're already adults, but the kids, when they would open when they opened the door for Eliyahu, one of the kids would go sneak out from the Seder before to the outside with a talit and be waiting outside as Eliyahu Navi is coming. In other words, we want to make it experiential as possible. Anyway, after this, so the cup of Eliyahu Navi was already poured, and after this, we all bench. Benching is part of it because showing gratitude and thankfulness is part of Seder. At the end, after benching, we drink our fourth cup leading to the left, and we say Borei Peragaf and drink to the third cup. And we because the benching is done over the third cup, we drink the third cup over there, and then we go to Hallel. The last parts of Hallel. The second part, as we said yesterday, Hallel is divided into two portions. The first portion of Hallel is thank God for the miracle of the Exodus, while the second portion of Hallel is thanking God for the future redemption. So while the first part of the Seder is concentrating on the Exodus from Egypt, the last part of the Seder concentrating on Mashiach already coming. And so the second part, we say the second, towards the end, we say the second part of Hallel over the fourth cup, and upon concluding the Hallel, and then we say Nishma Kol Chai, the prayer for miracles that's in the Seder, and then Ishtabach, and then we drink, and we make Borei Peragafim, leading to the left, we drink the fourth cup. At this point, the Chabad custom, the Rebbe would pour from Eliyahu Hanavi's cup back into the bottle, and back from the bottle to Eliyahu, back with the forwards while singing the Alter Rebbe's Nigun Keliata. Keliato ve'odeko Elokaya romimeko Keliato ve'odeko. Okay, over and over. There's no amount of times, we don't know exactly why, but that's the Rebbe who would do it while singing it. And then we make after bracha for Hagafen, and then we say Lashana Haba Yerushalayim, the next year Yerushalayim, and then we all start dancing. It's very interesting. There's a guy who in the old village in the old country where one of his non-Jewish squires came to see what they do by the Seder, and he sat to the Seder. And in the end, he says, Lashana Haba Yerushalayim, next year Yerushalayim. And he says, what do you mean by this? He says, we fully anticipate Mashiach is coming. And next year we're going to be doing this correctly with the Korban Pesach, and with and everything else, and all the Korbanot, and celebrating, seeing God, and truly liberated. The following year, he came again, the squire. And again, you hear the same thing. And he says, are you serious? Last year he asked. And the third year, the squire said, I'm coming. The Jew turned to God and says, God, please don't embarrass us like that. But in reality, in this moment, we have to resolve in our mind that from this point on, we're going to be bringing Lashana Haba doesn't mean the next year. Lashana Haba, the year is coming right now. That we have to live Mashiach, as we spoke about it for bringing the Machochan on Thursday night. That we have to live with Mashiach. That nothing is stopping us anymore. Just because we have hang-ups and traumas doesn't mean that right now we can't act as liberated as possible. And as we know, the Ruzhiner Rebbe, when he was 5 years old, once asked, and we spoke about this 2 weeks ago, once asked his father for an apple that was in his hand, and his father denied the request, and he asked again, and again he denied the request. So the Ruzhiner, he had already some wisdom at 5, he said the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem HaKolach Haolam Borei Prei Eitz. He said a bracha. You can't just say a bracha with Hashem's name for vain. So Hashem gave it to, so his father gave him the apple. He sort of forced his father's hand. And the Rebbe mentioned this, says we have the ability to do this now. If we start living with Mashiach, we give God no alternative. If we start being very expansive and not allow ourselves to fall into negativity, think negativity, speak negativity, act negativity, and live expansively, we have all the provision and abilities to have kosher Seder at the highest levels today. We have kosher all around us. We have shuls all around us. We could live as free as possible. We can't imagine how truly lucky and mazadik we are. We can't imagine just 56 years ago this was being done underground, completely quiet with almost nothing to eat. Today we have so much have so much gratitude. B'ezrat Hashem, Shana Zub Yerushalayim. Thank you very much. We'll continue this tomorrow.
Huh?
We'll continue this tomorrow.